recording on?
We are.
Okay, so do I need to watch what you say? No.
This is like this year's download.
It's big. First, last steps. This thing here. I'm hoping someone gets all the lines right there.
Yeah. During the week.
Yeah. Did anyone hear from Commissioner Sandberg?
I know she was planning on coming, but she was like 5 and she had my phone again. So asked us to sketch it.
Yeah, the rocket came and still icy. And it was yesterday.
All right, are you guys ready? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Present.
Commissioner Holcomb here, Commissioner Friedman,
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Sandberg.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Let's rise with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Is the commission ready to approve the consent items, or is there anything need to be pulled? You good? Is there a motion from the
Yeah,
commission?
Mr. Chair, make a motion we pass against on items A, B, C.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, and a second by Commissioner Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holcomb,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Or
Motion passes. Tonight, there are no proclamations, no scheduled public comment, no public hearings, no ordinances. We do, however, have a few resolutions. The first resolution is resolution number 4764, the resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign an informal settlement agreement with complainant through the Federal Highway Administration Montana Division to finalize ADA transition plan. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution came about, we were notified by the Federal Highway Administration that there had been a complaint against the city for failure to comply with the American with Disabilities Act, or ADA. They brought to us a proposal for a negotiated settlement. So this is the informal settlement agreement that you see. We sat down with them, discussed it, looked through all the clauses, felt it was a very reasonable settlement and prevents us from having to go to court on the issue. So we made a couple small changes that they agreed to. As far as being able to meet the requirements of this agreement, should not take any resources that the city doesn't currently have. We should be able to do it with current staff. We had a transition plan already, but it didn't quite meet the requirements that the Federal Highway Administration wished. So they have given us a year to bring that plan up to compliance. So we have until December of 2018. The other major components are to hold some public meetings to make sure that we get the correct input from any disabled citizens, and to assign a advocate group. They list one that is called Montana Independent Living Project. That could be an advocacy group. We've also reached out to the Active Transportation Coalition to see if they are interested in that. They are discussing it right now, but it sounds like that might be something that they can take on just as another access issue just with the disabled citizens. So we recommend the signing of this informal settlement.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on resolution number 4764? Public comment on resolution 4764. Is there a motion from the commission?
I make a motion, we pass resolution 4764.
I'll second.
So that's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, and a second by Commissioner Hoagland. Commission discussion, questions for clarification? Hearing none, let's have roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 4765, a resolution accepting the pipeline license number 602054 between the city of Livingston, Montana, between the city of Livingston, Montana, between the city of Livingston and Montana Rail Link Incorporated for the construction and maintenance of a pipeline for carrying potable water. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution came about because there was an annexation of a private water system back in 2004. We took over the water system. However, at the time, the private entity had a license with Montana Rail Link for access underneath the railroads for maintenance. That license did not get transferred at the time, so it still remains in private hands. So this license agreement allows us the access to that area underneath the rail link to maintain or inspect the water main in this case. The only fiscal impact is this is a $25 a year agreement with Montana Rail Link, and it will then provide us the access that we should have. So we recommend signing this license agreement with Montana Rail Link.
Great, thank you very much. Is there a motion from the commission on resolution number 4765?
I make a motion to approve resolution 4765.
That's correct. Is there a second?
Second.
Well, that's a motion by Commissioner Schwartz, a second by Commissioner Friedman. Is there any commission discussion or clarification? Just have a couple of housekeeping questions on the pipeline license on page 31. It's dated the 20th of December 2004. Is that the original time, or do we need to adjust that for this updated agreement?
Montana Rail Link updated this, obviously didn't update the date. So
Okay.
that's the original license agreement. I'll make sure that we correct that before we sign the final.
Okay, and also the public, the contact person is Public Works Clerk, or is that where all correspondence would go to? On page 31.
That, yes, that, yes, in both cases, that's
Okay.
where all correspondence will go.
Okay,
The Public Works Department obviously will be executing any of this license agreement, but correspondence will go to.
sounds good. Are there any other points of clarification, questions from the commission? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 4766, the resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement with Montana Department of Transportation for Transportation Alternatives Program project funding and maintenance agreement. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution comes about as the execution of the grant for the O Street connector that we have seen here before. In this case, this is the agreement that the state requires. They take over all of the construction-related expenses for this, and then we are required to match. There's a table on page 53 that shows our portion of the match. It's about 13.5% of the total cost of the project, or in this case, just under $40,000. The state will provide the rest of the cost, which is about $254,000, and they will be in charge of all the construction, inspection, and such. So we recommend signing this agreement with the state.
Okay. Is there a beginning motion from the commission on resolution number 4766?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 4766.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Hoagland, second by Commissioner Schwartz. Is there any points for clarification from the commission? Commissioner Sandberg?
Who designed the connector trail?
So we set the course for the connector trail, if that makes sense. So we said this is where we like it. The DOT will actually be contracted to have the actual design.
So they don't have a design yet, so it's an estimated cost?
It's
or-
all an estimated cost. Yes.
Okay, so, how does that work then if they go out for bid? I see that there's, table 2 has a guideline for overruns, and it looks like based on this project value that there's an allowable overrun of 20% for any, which I guess would mean that we would be contributing our current percentage if there was an overrun of 20%.
Yeah, I think as the total project cost goes up, we have to maintain the 13.5% or 13.42% in this case. So any additional cost, we would pay 13.42%.
And so like, in reading this, I understand that, my question regarding the overrun, I think there's a criteria where both the contractor and the city can determine if they want to move forward with that additional cost. So my question is that in it? Would that discussion happen after the overrun is hit?
So if the estimate comes, or if the contract is bid for more than expected, the city would be able to terminate at that point. We wouldn't don't want to pay the extra. That's a termination clause on page 52 or 18. We would be responsible for any funds that have been spent up until that point. So we would have to look at what would it cost us to terminate versus what would it cost us to complete at that point, which is a better financial decision. But we do have the option to terminate up until that point. But actually at any point, as long as we're willing to accept everything that's been spent up to that point. If that's too high of a cost and we don't want to meet that cost, if we don't terminate, if the state, I think, basically has the option to go 20% over, so we would be on that.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. That answers my question. And then, as far as maintenance, is there going to be anything in this connector that is paved that would require additional work for us to shovel in the winter?
No more than we clear our underpass right now, which is we don't. So there shouldn't be any additional. We do occasionally, but I don't think we do it on a regular basis.
We have agreed to help with snow removal on this section of the trail. That was included actually in the grant application.
That's correct.
And so how do you anticipate doing that? Or will that require additional man hours from the city?
Well, it'll require some additional man hours, but not a significant amount. Depending on where that trail is, I'm assuming along Park, we should be able to do it with just regular snow removal equipment.
We have a great relationship with MDT. We actually already helped them out with Veterans Bridge. Public Works is very close to this location. And so we have a skid steer with a broom and or a plow that we can run over and do that. So I think part of us committing to helping with the maintenance, in my opinion, helped us get awarded this grant, knowing that we
yes.
would help maintain the trail after it was built.
Right. So there'll be some additional costs. To the city, but I don't think it's the same.
I mean, it won't require us to hire any additional
No.
people. Okay. Sorry, I had one last question. I'm trying to regain my thought here because I've got my notes. I guess at this point, somebody has to listen to uncomfortable silence and pass to somebody else till I can remember what I wanted to ask. So thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else who would like, Commissioner Hoagland?
Could you clarify the transportation impact fee funding? And
That was my question. Thank you.
I know I'm surprised you didn't ask that. So, and how we often use transportation impact fees, just so the public as well can be clear as to how we fund projects like this.
Sure. So the transportation impact fees are the portion of new developmental fees that go specifically or earmarked specifically for transportation. There's also water, sewer, emergency services. So there's different categories of impact fees. So a new development will pay transportation impact fees. We have those basically on come on file. But we have an account or line item that has those fees in it, and then we use it in areas that would directly benefit transportation. They could be used for street projects, they could be used for projects like this that are multimodal transportation. So anything that falls within the transportation category, transportation fees could be used for.
This is more of a statement, but the Parks and Trails Committee had this trail or completing of this section as their #1 priority for a number of years, for the main reason of there's a trail to the hospital. The hospital built a trail as well to our, I just forgot the name of the park or the walking trail on the other side of the river, but there, and then the bridge, but then there's this section that's very, very unsafe, and people park on it and fish, to go fishing, and then they block the area you can walk on, and so it is truly one of the most unsafe areas, I think, for transportation or for walking in our community, and I'm excited to see that we're moving forward with it.
Commissioner Sandberg?
So back on the question of the funding with the impact transportation impact fee. When we adopted the budget earlier this year, was this part of that budget adoption?
I do not think we had this specific line item in there. It will fall within the approved budget amount, but it's not a specific line item.
Okay.
Any other commission questions? Is there any public comment? Like, you know the routine, name and address for the record, and there's a sign-in sheet out there. I guess you're supposed to kneel.
Mike Gomez, 611 North D Street. Corner.
There we go.
611 North D Street. I'm also the vice chair of the Parks and Trails Committee. We're working with the rail there. And that's one of the big priorities we've been looking at, to get that path established because of the need for connectivity from the city to the other side of the bridge. When they did Park Street, they kind of left that little 1-foot shoulder there, and so it's kind of dangerous for pedestrians, bicyclists, and also cars, because there's like a 45-degree drop off there. The car has to go off the side of the shoulder. But, so we've been working on it. It's been Jean Marie somebody's big dream for the last few years. She's probably been on it longer than we have. And we did, the Parks and Trails Committee did provide some funding for the preliminary engineering study, is that correct? Yeah. So that kind of gave them an estimate of how much it's going to cost and what's going to be involved and stuff like that. So I think that helped, whoever approved the grant to say, hey, this guy's been working on it and they're serious about it, let's give them some help. So it's going to be nice to have it up there. It's going to be a nice, safe route. People can ride their bicycles, we go to the park, we go to the hospital. One of the reasons we came for the trail is that the hospital is the biggest employer in the city. And so we have people that would want to, want to snatch butter 2 months out of the year and ride their bicycle. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay. The only question I had on the funding source of transportation impact fees was, do we kind of have a rough idea of what the balance is on that?
Oh, you have on top of your head, James.
Like 270,000.
Okay.
200,000 plus.
200K plus. Okay. Right. Any other points for clarification, questions? We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Hopper?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
4.
Commissioner Sandberg?
4.
Motion passes. The next resolution is resolution number 4767, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign amended use agreement with Livingston Youth Soccer Association. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So both this resolution and Resolution 4768 grew out of the effort with LYSA to provide a lease for the field house. However, the use agreement already had some stipulations that were referenced, although they didn't use the term field house. So the first thing we did was went through the use agreement and updated it to make sure that it would not conflict with any use agreement. So that is the resolution you see here. It updates some of the language to make sure it's consistent throughout both documents to reference the field house as the field house, and try to draw some more distinct lines between the soccer complex and the field house itself, so that it was clear which uses were for what. Other than that, there were no significant procedural changes to the amendment. Probably the largest one that remained was restructuring the scheduling responsibilities. The use agreement had outlined an operations committee that included a city employee and a school district employee. This use agreement does not include scheduling up to LYSA. I think that was a leftover from the use agreement, which was, I think it's 11 years old now. So before we actually had any operations, once we started seeing how it was operating, it was obvious that LYSA was doing the bulk of the work there, and Livingston City didn't need to be involved in spending time on that. So we removed those requirements to have the committee, and other than that, it just updates the whole use agreement. So we recommend the signature of the use agreement with LYSA.
Thank you very much. All right. Can we start with a motion for the commission?
I make a motion, we pass resolution 4767.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Holcomb. Questions? Public comment first. Is there any public comment on this resolution? The amended agreement between LYSA. Is there any commission discussion for clarification? Okay. I got a couple things marked here real quick. Oh boy, I have all sorts of questions. Okay. Okay, page 78, section 4, subset point 6, 4.6, improvements. LYSA shall have the sole right to improve the soccer complex in accordance with the development agreement as currently adopted or amended. Improvements to the field house are at the discretion of the city. So now when you're talking about improvements to the field house, I mean, what did we have in mind?
We don't have anything in mind,
Okay.
but that just means that there's going to be any changes to the physical structure itself as at the discretion of the city. So if we wanted to add a patio or a tiki bar or something, LYSA can't say that we need that, you have to do it. It's up to the city whether or not we would do any improvements. Obviously, we would still work with LYSA if there was a requirement for any improvement, but that is still the sole discretion of the city since it is still city code.
Great, thank you. Okay, page 81, section 5.7. Halfway through, it says the city commission will review and approve or deny all soccer complex names and designations made subsequent to the execution of this agreement as follows. So, have we ever done that? I don't ever remember doing anything like that. I don't know if LYSA has ever provided us with anything along those lines.
I don't think we've actually named any of the facilities, so if we wanted to make somebody memorial field or something like that, that would come before you. But that is unchanged from the original use agreement.
Okay. I know that we've named benches and
Tennis
Other-
courts.
Tennis courts.
well, the tennis courts, yeah, but that's not part of LYSA. But we've named benches and other things out there, and I didn't know if that would fall under
That's
that.
that part. No.
And if it's really really that essential. Unless we want to make sure that we're not naming things in reference to the list of undesirable issues.
I think that's what it doesn't apply to the North Side Park portion, but it does apply to the soccer complex portion.
So the field house.
Well, the soccer complex would be the fields themselves,
Okay.
and the field house is separate. So there's basically 3 entities up there. There's the North Side Park, which is the areas surrounding,
Okay.
surrounding with the trees and path and some of those areas. There's the soccer complex itself, which is the playing surfaces. And then there's the field house, which is the
You've gotten very adept at this particular facility, haven't you?
I get to study all kinds of them.
All right. Okay, great. Couple other stars here. Point 8 on 81, is that still something that needs to be done? Which is informing the public of status of complex? Is that something, shall we just keep it in there anyway?
That was unchanged from the original use agreement. I assume that LYSA still holds their annual meeting. Laura, you want to speak to that quick?
Sure.
Just say your name and address for the record.
Okay, Lori Case, 527 South 13th. We have a meeting every January. We have our annual general meeting, and then we always update the public at that meeting on anything going on with the North Side Fields and the complex and what we're doing with it. And then we will also be having another fundraising campaign, which will also be notifying the public on the plans and improvements for this. And we do try to keep everybody informed on it.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm good. Thank you very much for your patience. Any other points? Any other public comment? All right, and we have roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Sanders.
4.
Motion passes. Our next revelation. Yeah. Our next resolution is number 4768, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign a lease agreement with the Livingston Youth Soccer Association. Mr. Pardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the second half of the resolutions to give LYSA the ability to lease the field house or rent it out for events that are non-soccer related. So they already have the ability to do that for soccer related events. This expands that ability to non-soccer related events. As envisioned when originally built, the field house was meant for LYSA to be able right now to garner some income to then be able to put towards the maintenance of the soccer field and be able to maintain that area. So this would allow that to happen. This pretty much, if you go through the lease, is a standard lease reviewed by our city attorney who's out 6 weeks, so he can't answer any legal questions on it. And it outlines some, I think it does a very good job of balancing the agreement between the city and LYSA. It keeps it in line with our other commitments to nonprofit athletic associations, other nonprofits, as well as also gives some good value to the city as far as being able to use the building. One of the nice things about this is that allows the city to use it for staff meetings on a non-recurring basis. So if they don't have anything scheduled, we won't be interfering with anything they're doing up there, and we can use it for if we want to do commissioner training. We've done that up there. If we wanted to do some of the staff meetings, and even do a couple of things. So that's a nice that they added to the contract for us. So I think it's a pretty good contract. It covers the maintenance and repairs well. It covers the damage and destruction, the insurance. Pretty much covers all liability from the city perspective. We're covered both for liability for events and for physical damage to the building, which would be some kind of catastrophic event to the building itself. It outlines responsibilities of both the city and LYSA as far as making determinations on when it would be, if it will be reconstructed and when it will be reconstructed. So we are happy with this lease agreement and recommend that you authorize me to sign.
All right, so why don't we start with a motion? Is there a motion from the commission on resolution number 4768?
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we pass resolution 4768.
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman and a second by Commissioner Hoagland. Is there any public comment on this resolution? Please be sure to state your name and address for the record and sign in there in the book.
Okay, hi, my name is Tim Stevens, 315 North Third. I'm the president of the New Soccer Association. And I just wanted to say thank you to you all and the city manager and city staff who have worked diligently with the board and members of LSA to put together this agreement. We're very pleased with the meeting we had with the city manager last week and had a great conversation. And we're just enthusiastically here to pass this one and we can move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Is there any commission questions for clarification at all?
I already talked to you yesterday.
Okay, good.
I'm sparing you all.
Is that why he's not here tonight?
Probably.
All right. Anyone else? A couple of reminders here. So that on page 89, number 4, the rent, that $800, does that basically cover our liability insurance?
So in this case, it covers our structural insurance.
Structural insurance.
So we're not carrying liability insurance directly on the facility itself.
Association does.
They're covering the liability portion of it. So it's just the fire insurance.
Perfect. Okay, great. Could you, point number 5, could you explain that a little bit? There's some, let's see here, I'll read it here. The parties acknowledge that they will be unable to wholly prevent some activities that may occur at the premises. You were expecting this one, right?
No, we had this exact conversation, so that's all right.
Such being the case, the city shall not be found or held in default of any of the provisions of this agreement in the event the premises are used for unwanted, unauthorized, illegal, illicit activities. However, in the event the premises are being used for such activities, the parties shall meet at a mutual agreeable time and place to discuss a possible solution to the problem. Mr. Cardus, how do you answer this question?
So this is language that just arises out of most union leases. Basically, it says if someone that LISA rents the building to chooses to
Do something now?
yes, to conduct illegal activities in the building, we recognize that LISA can't prevent it. We also recognize that that's not our responsibility to prevent them from doing these illegal activities. So then we will, it clears us of liability and then allows us to negotiate with LISA and say, okay, they cannot build in that flat in the field house. Or run online, enforcement. Yes. So it just is it's a basic one that says it can't be used for any illegal activities, and if so, we won't know that.
But LYSA or the city could call the police, right?
Absolutely. In fact, we'll have signs with the number.
All right.
911.
Okay, good. Okay. If that's it on page 91, do we need, or will we have a particular contact for the signing from LYSA, or will that be just a general PO box that they'll supply us?
We left that blank for them to fill in before they sign it. So whatever address they would like to use.
Okay, sounds great. Is there any other questions from the commission? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hopeless.
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Commissioner Singer.
4.
Motion passes. You guys are ready to roll now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardis. All right, we're going to move on to action items, which are really kind of discussion items tonight. So we'll take up our first item first, which is discuss TD&H proposal for Northside Transportation Study for next commission meeting. Mr. Cardis.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're kind of moving in the freestyle portion of the agenda. So this is a different way of conducting business than we have in the past, and it's presented to you as an example. And tonight you can decide if you like it or if you want to go a different direction. All three of the items that we're going to talk about next are items that I had planned to place on the next agenda, but we're going to present them to you early, in some cases in different stages of development and readiness. And you can kind of get a feel for how you'd like to interact in the preparation for the next agenda. So what this should allow us to do is look at the proposal. We're not making any decisions tonight, so you don't necessarily have to understand everything tonight, but you do have to decide what information, if the information presented is enough, if it's acceptable, if there are certain parts of information that you'd like expanded upon, like clarifications that need to happen. We also don't have to do those tonight, but we can make a list for me to take away and get back to you. And I'll provide you the next 2 weeks to think about those and consider them before we actually make the decision on the 19th. So that's kind of the concept behind this one. For this particular item, this is a Northside Transportation Study. This is a proposal from TD&H and Marvin Associates, who are the traffic engineers who did the last traffic study. This is an expansion of the traffic study. The best graphic for that is on page 103, which kind of gives you the area that's going to study. This has been commissioned basically to look at the Northside Transportation Plan to determine if the traffic flows would work the way we think they would, what are the current traffic flows, to model future traffic flows based on anticipated growth, subdivision development, as well as determine the geography for the placement of both a front street extension, an extension of Meredith Ranch Road, and to see if there is a preferred location for a separated grade crossing. So that is the purpose behind the study. So they're going to do quite a bit in the study. They're going to do traffic counts. They will do computer modeling of current traffic, computer modeling of predicting future traffic. They will do an analysis of geography to determine the best routes for roads. And then they will come back to us with all of that with recommendations for how we can go forward with our Northside Transportation Plan. So basically, this is the next step in determining, is an extension of Front Street feasible? Is an extension from Meredith Ranch Road feasible? And where a separated grade crossing would be the most feasible and the most beneficial in traffic flow. So that's the purpose.
Perfect. Okay. Well, open discussion from the commission. Does anyone have any questions about the presentation, the information provided, and or what you need for the next meeting for making your deliberations for decision? Well, I didn't see your hand yet, so I thought I'd better wait. Commissioner Sandberg.
So Mike and I did talk earlier about this.
I'm not a fan of studies, I'll just say that. I think we spend a lot of money on studies.
Check.
Check, we got that. And I think, especially this last one that we did, was kind of a lot of information we already knew and had already seen in previous studies. So just trying to be fiscally responsible. I'm hoping we get, my question is, when you ask for a study, what are you hoping to get out of it? We don't want to just say, hey, do a study. And so I understand from the administration that we're trying to see if this concept is feasible. But I guess my question would be is, we're kind of handing them what we want to do, and will it work? But will this study be broad enough that they could say, you know what, really your best option is to do something done by the hospital? So are they taking this from the approach of verifying our wants? Or are they gonna do a thorough enough study that they may come back and say, you guys are all wet and your best option would be this?
So the answer to that is yes and no. So if you look at this, the graphic, that is the area they're gonna study. So they're not gonna go outside of that at all.
So it's not really gonna be Green Acres at all then?
No, Green Acres isn't really brought into this because this is specifically on the northwest side. So this is a northwest transportation plan. Did we also include an additional way off the hill, Shannon? Is that one of the things in there?
We were for the
Yes.
North Town review trails.
So
area.
looking for an additional way down from there to connect into the system. So that's one thing I didn't mention. But it is going to be focused on this area. Now, there are a couple cost saving measures that we're going to try and implement, depending on how they work out. Prior traffic studies, we've used MDT equipment to do some of the traffic counts. Been able to do it ourselves, and that reduces the cost. We'll look at doing that again. We've asked the county if they have any current traffic counts for some of the areas that fall in their jurisdiction. If they do, that's things that we can take out of the current proposal and reduce the cost there as well. But it is focused on what transportation infrastructure is needed for the northwest side of things. So it's not a total look at the city. It is focused on that. Now, they do have the flexibility to say that extension is never going to work and you shouldn't do it. Or, there's no need for separating the crossing. I mean, they do have the flexibility to give us their recommendations, but they are focused just on the northwest side.
Okay, I guess I was just thinking about that after our conversation today really is, I'm not sure because I'm not in that area what the congestion is on that Green Acres crossing down by O Street, by the treatment plant. Are we making sure we're encompassing the entire problem? I think another concern I had that I'll share with the commission that I talked to Mike about today was verifying that and I realize where they have the intersections where they're going to do the traffic counts, but the assumptions being made that those people coming off the north side are actually going to be heading west, or will they continue to be wanting to cluster towards the school district first and then rerouting themselves west? So that's, and I realize, unless you stop everyone and ask them where they're headed, it's almost impossible. But I think the concern I have, and I realize that there's models that they use, and maybe I'd want to understand that model a little bit more, of making sure that we're not just counting cars, that we somehow have a mechanism to determine that we are assuming those cars are going where we think they're going. And I guess if that's making sense, if we, everyone that's coming on 5th Street, are we assuming 20% of them are headed over to Bozeman to go to work? Or are we assuming 100% of them are going to drop a kid off at school and then 40% are headed to Bozeman to work? I just don't know how you determine those numbers to get a true gauge of the traffic headed out west and at what time. And I do realize with the traffic counts, there's one right there at PFL and then one close to the truck stop, maybe? If I'm looking at that correctly.
Close to the truck stop and then some of the interstate as well. So you get what traffic stops and what traffic continues.
So if I'm understanding maybe then the dot on 5th Street there, is that what that further right-hand dot is? In the lower quadrant of the study?
Yes, I think that's it.
So probably based on the count that they take there at a certain time, and then the consistent count, say within a 20-minute time frame after that, then they can determine from the number of cars on that 5th Street what percentage of them are actually heading west.
Yeah, so there is an entire methodology behind the computer modeling that does exactly what you said. It looks at where the peak traffic is at different time intervals, and then determines from there where the flow of traffic is going. It's not perfect because it's a mathematical model, but they will look at how much of the traffic is stopping at PFL, how much is continuing on to the interstate. They will use the traffic counts from the last traffic study, and I believe we did Bennett Street in the last traffic study as well.
We have.
So we do have some of the data on the people coming across that crossing at Bennett Street out to Park, which wasn't a significant problem, I don't think, right now. There was no recommendations that we need to have for that intersection. But yeah, so they will determine where the peak flows are, what the numbers are, and then from that, they do have big old formula that'll tell you more or less what percentage of that traffic and the routes they're taking.
Okay, and then though also, just because I guess I drive that corridor pretty much every day and I don't really ever see a traffic backup, except when the interstate's closed. And so, you know, I guess I would like to understand too, when in the study, you know, they do say, hey, there's a percentage of people, and then based on a proposed projection, we can estimate that this would be, you know, the population that's going to use that exit. But how many people, old habits are hard to break, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So how many people, if that corridor was open, would actually use it, even if it was shorter or not?
I think that depends a lot on their perception of their delay.
Okay.
Because traffic like water is going to follow the path of least resistance. It's going to go the easiest way. I saw significant changes to traffic patterns in Virginia consistently, and people amazingly always found the way around whatever the new traffic feature was to still take the back street because it was perfect. A lot of apps also help with that. Once you get it on things like Google Maps or let's see the big traffic on Waves, it'll tell people that that's a faster way to go, especially if they're from out of town.
Right.
So there will be some of that. It will take some time. Habit patterns are hard to break, but people will find the shortest routes, and people will find the paths of least resistance on their particular travels for the day.
Okay. I'm just, would hate to spend all the money to the study, perhaps put in a crossing over there and nobody use it and they just continue with the congestion problem. So if, you know, if we're really looking for a solution, just because we put it in there and we think it's a better solution, if there's no buy-in from the community that they believe it's a solution, it's still not gonna work.
On the bright side, we're going to have plenty of opportunities for the community to weigh in on whether or not they think it's a good solution.
Okay,
Especially when we get to the funding aspects of it.
sure, okay. So those are just some of my thoughts in reviewing it, and again, Mike and I had shared some thoughts earlier. The only other question I have that kind of relates to this and kind of, well, it does relate to this, but it relates to other things is, do we ever look at other companies? We seem to use TD&H as a backfall for a lot of things, and I realize there's a threshold which requires us to go out for bid, but regardless if you reach that threshold or not, I always think it's a good practice to go out for bid periodically on projects that just so people don't get too comfortable that they're a shoo-in. And I just really see, I realize we have TD&H as our in-house engineers, and I still am not clear exactly what they do for what we pay them already. But it just seems, since I've been here, that all engineering products are just handed to TD&H. And I'm just questioning A, why, and B, why we wouldn't look at some other options for some of these issues.
A quick answer on that is the cost associated with going out to bid is fairly high, and for a low dollar project like this, it's usually not. The additional percentage it would add to the project to go out for bid is usually not worth it. And that's why you keep a city engineer on staff, is so you don't have the cost of going out to bid on these types of projects. Obviously, for bigger projects like the water reclamation facility, we go out to bid and we have a different engineering firm that's doing that project. It's a balancing act. You have to determine, do you think it's more fiscally responsible to save the cost of going out to bid, accept the offer from TD&H, or if you don't believe TD&H is in the ballpark of what people are going to cost you, you can go out for bid at that point. So,
but isn't the bid process, I don't remember the dollar threshold that we actually have to go out for bid, but if it's under that threshold, I thought the requirements for bid were different. It was only when you meet that dollar threshold that you have to follow that direct bid process. And if it's something under that, you can do a modified bid process if you want, because you don't have to take it out for bid.
I believe you can do a modified bid process, but any bid process is going to cost in time, if nothing else. So there's upsides and downsides, and it really is just a judgment call on what's the best use of the money.
I understand that. I guess I think competition's good. I know every one of us, if we were doing a project in our own home, we would get multiple bids. You know, that's just fiscally responsible, so.
Unless you had a construction guy on retainer.
Well, yeah, that, except you're giving your company extra funds, I mean, you don't know then if they're gonna be a lowest bid. You're just giving it to them because it's convenient. And so, you know, it's a discussion for another time, but I really think we should be looking at, you know, how we're making sure that we are getting the best price for our projects in regards to the taxpayer. And I don't think just handing it to the same engineering firm as the answer. So, just my thoughts.
Okay. Commissioner Hoagland.
Yes, thank you. Two questions. So speaking of understanding the needs or the wants of the neighborhoods or the homeowners of that area, in the past, at the beginning of when I was on the commission, we did a survey that we put out with the water bills. I don't know, getting the sense of what or how they're using the crossings and where they're going could just come through a survey from the city potentially. Just a thought. Also, I guess for next week or next meeting when we discuss this fully and decide on the issue, I would like to understand their intersection counts or electronic counters and why they chose those spaces or those places. To me, that bottom right dot is at Washington School, correct?
That's what I see.
Yeah, and so we're missing Fifth Street. There's not a dot near there.
But we have a count of Fifth Street already from the last traffic study. You remember we could combine this data from different studies, and so it's a waste of money to recount somewhere you've already counted. I'm pretty
And
sure.
if I might interrupt, I mean, a lot of people in that part of town use 7th and 8th Street to access
Right.
either Chinook or Front Street.
Okay. So then the top dot is, I mean, near Washington is dealing with the people on the North Hill
It is.
coming down.
It is.
Okay, and then
And If it
school
would,
traffic,
excuse me.
sorry Shannon, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And
Oh, wow.
then right below Star Road, I'm forgetting the street right now.
Mhm.
That's Star, okay, Star. Okay, and then the two on the interstate, the one at the turn, the weird turn. And then is that the one at PFL?
Yes, just like it.
Yes.
And then that is, what, no, I forgot the name right now. Meredith Ranch.
Yep, intersection.
Okay. So we're not missing anything.
We're
I'd hate for
not,
us to
and
go through a survey and miss a major point.
if it would help if we, when we bring this back in front of you to show you all the intersections that we did counts for our current study.
Yeah,
And, we have full intention of being able to use the MyoVision cameras, and Matt is an expert at that now. And so really, for us to go out and set that up and collect that data is a cost-saving measure for this proposal. And we can collect additional data at intersections if we're doing that in-house.
I guess for questions for the next meeting, I would probably, this is something I learned the hard way, I would probably frame it in what areas you worry about capturing, not what intersections have counts. Because the traffic engineers are gonna know where to put stuff to capture what. But if you have certain concerns of, I wanna catch the traffic that's going from Fifth Street to Washington School, or we can give that answer, and that'll probably give you a better answer than why do you have that particular count, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That way we can give you, actually address your concern instead of just talking about another subject.
that's all for now.
Thank you. Commissioner Schwartz.
On the far right of that map, I see two counters. Is that on Front Street? Those two hashes.
Front and Yellowstone.
Well, Front and Yellowstone, keep going all the way to the right.
What do they have here? What do
Yeah, the electronic counter stripes, is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
The
Control plus.
that's at Fifth and, where's that at, Matt?
Be Yellowstone and Front Street.
And where's the other one at?
One is on Yellowstone. Between
Oh, one is
Chinook,
at-
what between Chinook and Front.
No, that's the intersection, I'm talking traffic on.
You're right.
Oh, over there, oh. Yeah, far right there.
That little, those two lines?
Those are counters, aren't they?
No,
No, that's,
the dots are intersections.
intersection counts, electronic counters,
Lines are.
are hash marks. So that's street, in front of the street and at Fifth, and then what's that other one up in that? Is that, Gallatin, wait. What's the name of that street?
Chinook?
Fifth and Chinook? That other counter?
Looks to me like it's Fifth and Front Street.
No, the one up.
It'd be on
Yeah.
on Fifth
Thank you.
between Chinook and
Let's do
Front.
this. What's the, which one
That's
that?
Front Street.
There's Front Street
Right,
and
front between, looks like
It's
Fifth and Sixth, okay. And then that other counter is Fifth and
Fifth between Front and Chinook.
Chinook, okay. All right. Yeah, but it's not at an intersection, it's just in. Yeah, okay, all right.
And the basic concept is they're trying to determine the traffic history where it's coming from.
Right, how many people are using the
Yeah.
front street, how many are using Fifth?
Exactly.
And if I may just add one comment, an interesting exercise, and I've done it twice now, just to confirm what I saw the initial time, is go out around 5:30 to 6 o'clock at the 7th and Highway 10 intersection and look at the traffic coming into town for people coming from work in Bozeman back to Livingston. It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
I've seen it,
I mean, it's only really bad when the interstate's closed. Then
Well, I do.
but I'm just saying the volume of traffic.
I've been through, yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, wait, I still have it. But yeah, no, I've seen that, I've been through 3 cycles of that light before I got through at that time of day.
watching you.
I do.
Okay. Commissioner Sandberg, do you want the floor again?
I'm losing my mind. I did. Oh, could you provide for us what you think cost savings measures could possibly be?
Sure.
And Quentin's comment, sorry, derailed, but is it possible to have signs put up that say don't park on the tracks when there's a stop signal?
Any sign can be put up, yes.
I am amazed at how many people on that intersection that Shannon was referring to that I see every day come in for a red light and they park across those tracks.
Yeah, they have a 6 of them.
They're being very courteous.
Yeah, just anyway, safety measure, I guess. I don't know if they must not teach that in traffic school anymore. Sorry,
Okay.
sidebar, but thank you.
Deal. Any other commission comments? We'll get to public comment in just a moment. The only thought I had on this traffic study is we have that dot at the curvature where front meets star, which is going to capture kind of everyone coming out of that section of the city. But I'd like to kind of get a sense. I know this is probably more costly, but maybe it's going to be captured in one of these dots. When people are coming out of Ridgeview Trails, which is kind of a growing area, are they coming out down Star Road? Or are they going to, most of them going to take 9th Street over to the Front Street? And, I think that that's an important set of data to capture as well.
So you'll get that just by capturing all the data in Star? Because everybody that's gonna go down Star will go across there, both Ridgeview and not.
Right.
And then you get that, the rest of you, compare that to the data coming from the other directions and the data crossing fit, you'll get the total number. You can pull that number out.
You can? Okay.
And that's really what the traffic engineer, that's where he earns his money, is limiting the number of places you have to spend money to share data to be able to compile it. Because what he's doing is he's taking many different pieces of data, figuring out how they fit together, and you can derive a lot from that without as many counts. Because every count, obviously, that's a lot of the cost of the study, is the manpower to sit out there and count. So they will be able to determine that, just you don't need, because to actually determine that a different way, you have to add 2 more count points, one on each side of the trail to figure out who people are coming in and people are coming out. So
Because the other interesting thing that will, I guess you could probably do it by projection, but on 9th Street there between Ridgeview and the rest of the city, where that new development's going, as they get building there, there's going to be a whole larger number of people coming out that way as well.
yes, and that's actually also part of the study is the projections for the growth both in the North Town area and the Center. Okay. They'll calculate those using a computer model.
Excellent. Is there public comment? You probably didn't know this, but be sure to state your name and address for the record.
How many times have I done this over the last 18 years? Patricia Graybo, 204 East Callender Street. I have a question on this placement of electronic counters. It's ironically where at one point our city manager and the head of Printing for Less had said that they were looking at having an underpass to the north side of town. Is that related at all to the electronic counter being placed there? I'm just asking the city manager.
No, the traffic engineer decided where everything went.
Okay. I think this study is pretty unnecessary, frankly. And I would like to say that, by the way, I lobbied for Metro in suburban Virginia in the late 60s and have been involved in traffic studies for a lifetime. I also have worked for an entire year. It surprised me that Livingston does not have a comprehensive plan, not a graph policy, but a comprehensive plan. Because were we to have a comprehensive plan, we would take a look at this map right here, and we would look at Fleischman Creek, the green of Fleischman Creek that comes out, and see where the green is, and then we would look at where the wetlands are over in front of Printing for Less. Great Falls had the great sense. Take those wetlands and turn them into park areas and plan for the future, really plan for the future. And the watershed that the city is looking at. And I'm a member of 2 environmental groups, all of whom are saying, why aren't we taking our watershed into consideration when we do this planning for overpass, underpass, access from the north side of town? And save those really valuable places. The antelope bird, they're young. I've watched them year after year in front of the truck stop in that federal watershed. By the way, that'll take a huge amount of environmental study before we could ever get any kind of overpass or underpass in that particular watershed. So I think a traffic study is really not necessary. What we really need at this point is a comprehensive plan. And if you will look at that map and see where Northern Lights comes out, that is where we've been advocating for some time for example, an overpass would cost about $6.5 million as opposed to 13.4 for an underpass. And I think they're related. I think a traffic study and where we're planning to put access from the north side of town are part of each other. And I think there's some preconception that is not based upon the larger picture of the future of this community and how our water flows, how our greenlands need to be preserved, what our really comprehensive plan for the city of Livingston should be. And we are the best planned city in the state, Northern Pacific Plan, Livingston. Why wouldn't we do a comprehensive plan instead of these minor traffic studies that lead to somebody's preconception of what we should really have? We need to sit back, we need to take a look at our terrain, we need to take a look at our population, we need to look at our projected growth and do a comprehensive plan, not a growth policy, a comprehensive plan for Livingston, Montana. And all this I see doing is doing a traffic study so that it can justify doing underpass out by creating for less, which would be destructive to a very important wetlands. So we haven't combined, we have not combined traffic studies and the kind of planning this city absolutely should be doing. I just see no reason for this study. I do see the future of Livingston being where an overpass where the light comes out. And that isn't even considered in this traffic study. Please not piecemeal this thing. We have a future that's pretty exciting and the intelligence to do a comprehensive plan.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? All right. So, as so you want to have this at this point. So, does anyone have any other direction for the city manager regarding information they'd like in order to consider this at the next meeting? Mr. Schwartz.
Just a quick question. I don't know if anybody can answer this, but when the study was being done for the underpass, that is currently marked, was there a traffic study done at that point? Did anybody know?
There were some traffic counts done.
Just,
And there were some feasibility, as part of the feasibility
Right.
study. Now, if they are still current from 2005, I doubt it. I think it's probably time to update it after
You're right, yeah.
12 years.
That's why I was curious. I wasn't sure on the timeline on that.
But certainly,
Well, it's been a
we,
good
we,
10, 12
that
years.
information will be available to TD&H and Bob Marvin,
Right.
along with any of the other studies that we've had that pertain to that project.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Schwartz, is that something you'd like to see for the next meeting?
Just that, that that's considered. I mean, you have that day, they have that day, data, or they will look at it. So I just was curious about how recent it was. I guess it's 12 years kind of answers that question.
Well, if we have it, we might just pull it out.
I don't need to see it. No,
Oh, okay.
just as long as it's considered. I was just curious how, more than anything, how old it was. If it's still relevant, obviously. A lot of times passed. So.
Great. Any other commissioner want to need any other information in order to consider this for the next meeting? I have just one point of clarification, is that's on page 101, under plan systems recommendations. And number 1, new street classifications will be developed and presented within the overall plan. When they're talking about classifications, I'm not quite sure if I'm familiar with that term.
I can't take, you can give a specific definition. for
Minor, classifications on the vehicles.
Arterial,
Yep.
feeder, those kinds of streets, residential. So
Okay.
the new streets will be classified as one of those, they'll have an arterial collectors, residential streets.
Okay.
So any proposals, they will label what kind of streets they are.
Okay.
For function.
Next technical question then, I have one more, sorry. It's on page 100. And that's under new street link locations. That's point number 1. Could you can anyone explain, street parallel and north of the railroad tracks will be evaluated based on geometric conditions?
That's the front street extension, and will it work there? But really, that's, I'll look at the topography and say, can you find out?
Oh, that's what they mean by geometric conditions?
Yes.
They didn't want to say, well, we find out if we can put a road there?
That doesn't sound nearly as fancy, you can't charge as much.
Okay. All right. Is there any other public comment? Yes, please. And state your name and address for the record, and then be sure to sign in.
Steve Coons, 1007 Eagle Court. Just one brief question. Does the scope of this thing go so far as to recommend the type of crossing and the location of the crossing?
It should, yes.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Has everyone on the commission been able to provide the city manager with what your needs were for this particular subject? Okay. Is this a comment that's different than what you provided already?
Yes,
Okay. Apropos to this subject.
apropos.
Okay. This is your second time, Patricia. Can you keep it to 4 minutes? Okay, thank you very much.
I have a quick question about accountability of those doing the study. For example, we did the $1.2 million study on the underpass on, and at which point we, the estimate for doing the cost for doing an overpass was 19.2 million. And it turned out when Dick Anderson did their estimate was approximately $9 million. So there was a $10 million discrepancy in the study done by the engineers, to which the engineering firm was never held accountable. Is there any provision in all this for inaccuracies that are done by the engineering firm, to which that accountability on their part? They weren't accountable for that kind of disparity in the cost of an overpass in that study. I followed it in detail. $10 million discrepancy is a pretty significant discrepancy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. So ready to move on to the next discussion item?
Mr. Carter, could you just give a wrap up of what you would like for the next meeting? So that we're all on the same.
Regarding this.
Yes. Yes.
I think the only person, like you and Commissioner Sandberg, had specifics. So why don't you go ahead?
The overlay of the other studies and our study with the potential data that will be collected for this study and how, so we're coordinating. I forgot my other one.
Okay. Commissioner Sandberg, can you restate that for us, please?
So one of them was the cost savings proposed that you think out of the bid. And I think the more I listen and some of the comments that Ms. Grego made, so we're asking them to study what we want to do. And we're not asking them to study this area and give us a solution. We're saying, this is what we want to do. Tell us if we can do it. And I think any one of us would tell you can do it. I mean, I'm struggling with what they're going to provide us. I mean, we know there's a problem on everyone's radar, and it has a range of importance to many different people in the community. I do think it's a little remiss to pull out a section of our community to do a study with a project in mind, not knowing how that's gonna affect the rest of the square footage of our community. And any of the other traffic flows coming up 59, coming up off the interstate over there. You know, we have more subdivisions going in over by the wastewater treatment plant, proposals for, you know, expansion out by the hospital. And it does sound, why are we not looking at a comprehensive study of all the traffic in town and just focusing on one corridor, which we could make a change, which then could affect positively or negatively everything else in the community, which may involve more money being spent to perhaps have to make changes to accommodate change A. Philosophical discussion, but would we, excuse me, prefer to look at the bigger picture before we start attacking these smaller sections to just make sure how everything coincides with each other? Just a thought.
So the only specific you had on that was about the cost savings.
Well, the cost savings, and it's back to my question of what really are we studying? We're asking them, we know what we want to do, so is it really a study? I don't know, I'm just throwing it
Yeah, well,
out
I
there.
think you could answer that one better than me at this point.
Yes, it's actually a study. They are looking at the area that we think has the most transportation challenges as development continues. They looked at, basically it was a comprehensive study, the last traffic study. If you look at the area that was covered in that traffic study, it's significant. It was, I would say, Shannon, 80% of the city? Probably 80% of the city was covered in the traffic study that we just got in August. So this on top of it is really just looking at a more specific problem after looking at the whole system. You know, right now there's no projected development out by the hospital. There's no building permit request. There's no subdivisions that are going out there. So there's not any current development out there. Obviously, they looked at that during the original study up to the bridge, I think, or at least up to Bennett Street. So that corridor has been looked at. This is really a focus study on, we think there will be transportation issues here in the near future to mid-future. What are our options to plan ahead for that versus reacting to it after it's a worse problem? Now, they may find out, they may come back to us and say, this is not going to be a problem. Your current configuration is fine. You don't need to do anything. That is an option. So they do have a lot of flexibility in their answer to us. We gave them some ideas of what we were thinking about doing. Please see if those are feasible. But they do have the option to say, yes, you can do it, but the traffic counts don't justify it. So there's a.
But as far as we have stated to them where we would like the crossing, will they look at different areas?
Yeah, we've stated we need a crossing somewhere between Star and Meredith Ranch Road. So they can look at that entire area for whatever they think is the best. Now, again, these are not engineers as far as construction engineers go, so they're not going to give us a, hey, this is what a, they may not even give us actually whether they think it should be underpass or overpass, actually, now that I think about that. They're traffic engineers, so they're going to say you need a separated grade crossing in this area for traffic flow.
But if we're telling them we need the crossing, who are we? We are not traffic experts. Tell them that we need it. Shouldn't they be telling us that?
Well, you got to give them some parameters to work with. You can't just say, study the city and tell us what you think we should do, because that will cost a lot. So you got to give them some parameters to work with. There has been interest in a crossing for 20 years, 40 years. So, I mean, it's obviously something that the community has, well, they voted to actually pay for the study. So there's actually some support for figuring out what to do behind that. So I think we say, hey, we think we need a crossing. We think it should be between Star and Meredith Ranch Road. Where do you think the appropriate place is, and do you think it's needed? And so the traffic counts and the projected traffic counts will help us solve that problem. They may say, hey, you know what, you don't need a crossing. You can bring Meredith Ranch Road down and hook it into an extended front street. That'll cover all your traffic needs. They may say, you don't really need an extended front street. If you make improvements to Fleshman Creek Road, that will handle all the traffic that you need to come in. So they have the capability to give us any recommendations that they feel are the best for that section. If
But
that
not
makes
a
sense.
crossing between Seventh and Star.
Between 7th and Star. Within a
Well,
couple blocks of Fifth, you're talking?
I'm thinking, yeah, between the current intersection and Star.
If I could say something on that, there was a study done on that already. Back in the 90s or early 2000s.
So why are we not even looking at that?
I think
That's what I was asking for, is like to get an idea with all the overlays of the studies, so we have a more comprehensive answer. And this is more about another study, but by using and knowing the other information, we will be able to have a better decision, I think, putting them all together.
So if
Mr.
it,
Sanford was told
Thinking
before.
of the future.
so, no, that's fine. So are you aware of that study in the 90s?
I knew they looked at different locations for it, but they were pretty much rejected. I think the Star location was the location we thought was best at the time, which was, I don't know, they made a decision 15 years ago. Ish. So,
Well, I guess the fact that we're revisiting it, I'd just be interested in what the study, I mean, we paid for it. I'd be interested to know what I have to say.
we can see if we can pull it up. Do you have that on file, Karen?
It is in the documents of interest. It is the feasibility study completed by Dow at the time, HKM.
So it's online?
It is.
Okay.
It may be hard to find right now because we're still.
So-
moving around.
That study primarily looked at Star Road to the east. It did not evaluate any crossings west of the Star Road intersection. So it looked at everything from Star Road to the east towards Bennett Street and the Yellowstone River. If I may, some of the concerns about developments out by the hospital, Green Acres in that area, the planning board certainly has the authority to require developers to do traffic studies. And it's very beneficial that we have a general study with traffic counts over 80% of the town plus this area, that if the planning board requires a developer to do a traffic study to mitigate the impacts of their development, this information only complements that, and then those improvements necessary would be borne by the developer typically. So things like Green Acres and that area, we could require them to do their own study if there's annexations in that could have impacts. Certainly the Watson property with the hospital, if that comes in as one development, the planning board could require that as a condition of the preliminary plat.
Could we do that with the Northtown?
The planning board has actually already done that, and the commission, I thought that was brought in front of the commission, and one of the preliminary plat conditions was to look at the traffic.
So I do want to stress one thing. This is traffic engineer. This is not Dowell. This is not Hewlett. We're not doing the feasibility of underpass construction. This is traffic flow and feasibility of routes, basically. So we're not anywhere close to a Dowell type study that tells us, hey, this is how much it's going to cost if you put it here. That's going to be later on once we get a recommendation on what it should be.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and move on to discussion item B. Discuss AE2S amendment proposal to be included for decision at the next commission meeting. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just the extension of the last discussion we had on this issue. Provided a little more information in the packet for you, but really just want to get a solid understanding of what we'd like before we make a decision again next week.
Open it up to the commission. Anyone have any specifics they'd like to direct the manager to, or any discussion items or clarifications on the material supplied?
We have administration's walk us through the information provided. I mean, what it is,
Which part?
all of it.
All it from the last one or from this one or both?
What's in our packet, if you can, I mean, explain to us what was provided and what the information is.
All right, so the first is basically a draft resolution, right? Actually, it's a resolution. So, well, that's, so the legislative summary goes over it. The first one is the resolution we passed on the 21st of March in 2017, which was the amendment number 1 to the contract. I think that was included in the last one too. We put it in this one.
And, sorry, amendment number 1, so we approved that in March
In March, yes.
with the additional fees associated with it.
Yes, with amendment 1, yes. That is correct. And those are outlined in page 1 to 12. Then 4635, which was the 16th of February 2016, which was the original award of the contract, and that is included there as well. That's the original professional services agreement with A2S.
And what page was that? That's that happy thing
That starts on page 114. The actual agreement
Okay.
starts on page 1.
So that's the resolution 4635.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, and then there's a lot of attachments with that are included. So it looks like there's new items, but there actually are no new items until page 138, which is just a project detail. And this really isn't meant for you to comb through to figure out what hours go with what project and try and do a deep dive. It's just an example of how E2S is managing the project, how they're keeping their time and to this specific. So this is 37 pages of just hours they haven't billed us for. So these would be additional hours that they believe are either out of scope or they're not going to bill us for. So all that information is available. Just as an example that they're doing a pretty good job of tracking each of those hours. And those are the things that get rolled up when we say that they spent 500 hours on USD procurement. This is where that information comes from.
So when that gets there, yeah. So what are the colors coordinate with?
I think that's just different portions of their billing scheme. That's project phase and task.
So this is not project.
The project is the water reclamation facility.
So the project detail says job to date through 11/30. This doesn't include everything they've done. This just includes the overage.
This just includes things they have not done before. Not every hour of this is in what we presented to you to ask for the additional funding. So these are the additional hours they kept and placed against the project.
So this, when you say not billed us for, is there anything in this grouping of numbers here that was in the original scope that they just, it's not the end of the month and they haven't billed us for? Or is this all have to do with the change orders that were put in front of us at the last meeting?
I think the vast majority has to do with the change orders. There may be some hours, if you look at the dates that are beyond the scope of what we were talking about. The vast majority are things that are included in the amendment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you might be able to find one that had a date that was not outside of what we're looking at. But in general, this is just non-billed hours. Most of them are towards the change order, the amendment that we have. There is, I mean, their actual hours billed for the project, I think it's like 220 page document of this same kind of info.
So if we wanted to see that breakdown for the grant administration, are we gonna find that in there? Or
It's not
is it-
broken out. You would if you pieced
It's not
up,
broken out.
if you piece together everything that said USD grant procurement. I'm not sure what their thing is. You have to go through, obviously, this is a database for them, so they pull by task. We don't have that much recent.
Do you have it in there?
I don't have it in the database.
Okay, so I interrupted that. So, okay, we have to find the breakout and anything else, or was that the end?
That's it.
Okay. So
I would, I'll probably end up calling you with some questions as I get through it. But I would like to know, they came in with X, you came back with Y. Where the rationale of why you felt it should be less in those particular areas.
The rationale of what?
Rationale, why X, went Y. Put it into an
Algebraic formula.
algebraic formula,
Well, so it's the rationale for what? Not X.
and we can solve for K. Yeah, and then did you provide us, is the, and I have to say, since I saw it was for discussion, I didn't read the whole thing, but what you provided to us with the original award on resolution 4635, that document actually outlines their responsibilities and scope of
Yes.
what we expect
The
from the
use of
project.
the services agreement, I believe it's called, if I may. That's the original, yes.
Okay. And so when we then, after we awarded them, so here's my question, was that the award for the architecture and engineering? Because didn't we do a separate one for construction management?
So the professional services agreement was originally, I think, just Andy, right, just
Or, yes, design.
design. And then when we rolled in the USDA loan, they had different requirements, so we then added the construction management into the same.
Amended it into
Contract.
the EJCDC document that
Yes.
USDA requires.
So was there a separate construction management document then that we approved?
It was amendment one.
That is the construction
Yeah, so
management.
between the professional service agreement and amendment one, that covers all, both the construction management and the design.
And so everything of this overrun will be encompassing between A and E and construction management.
Management.
No,
No,
just
not
design.
construction management, design.
Just design.
This is only up through design.
So this, any of these change orders are all A and E?
This is all,
All we did, and we split us.
And I'm not sure if they all are, there could be some others mixed in there. They gave us some information on this, like, the other day, for that, so we can separate them out. Super well.
Thank you.
Is there any other input from the other commissioners? Is there any public comment? On discussion item? I think you and I had already discussed what my needs were, and we already answered those. So I'm good at this point. Commissioner Sandberg?
I just, one point of clarification, because I asked this question, I don't know if anybody else will be looking at the numbers, but can you go to page one? Remember what page that we were looking at, Mike? Try 141.
Well, you did say something about it.
Yeah, so if you dive into the numbers and any chance, you'll see here, right, yeah, right there's one. And maybe you guys already know this, but so for instance, you see 2 hours here at a rate of $59.62, which would basically be $118, but we're getting charged $248. So I was hoping it was just bad math. But yeah, or 1 hour at
So to cut to the
29.
chase, $124 an hour is what we're paying for professional engineering services.
So I'm not sure why they provided what they provided to us, but the far column is what we're paying irrelevant to what their cost was,
Okay.
is how they're submitting that to us. So just, I have that question, so I'm just pointing it out in case somebody else has that question when we look at it.
Thank you.
Very much. So is that it from the commission? All right. Are we clear about what we need?
Summarize, so we make sure we all are on the same. I have rationale of what? Is there anything else?
Go ahead. Commissioner Oakland.
So that was my request last time. Is there anything else from my request and considering some request on understanding what you recommended and what they were asking for and reconcile that?
Sure, we can get you a breakdown by the next.
I didn't know if I had to restate it, just to make sure.
I think that's the same question, right? Just the rationale.
Rationale of why
To
you
self-contained.
came up with your number as compared to their number.
Yes.
Correct? All right. All right, so let's move on to discussion item C. And that is TDNH Construction Management Contract for next commission meeting. Mr. Carduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a different type of presentation too. So this is something to think about as we go through this. This is in a much, I won't say much, this is in an earlier stage of development than the first contract we showed you on action item A. So action item A was where we complete the contract, all the negotiating is done, and then we bring it to you. Action item C is earlier in the process. So they got reversed in the packet, so my apologies for that. But the spreadsheet in the back are the actual numbers we're currently looking at, starting on page 182. The contract on page 177 is just an example of what it would look like when it was formalized and brought before you in 2 weeks. So if you look, the date on that was May 10th of 2016. That was for a project that didn't get let. So the numbers in there are meaningless. That's just an example format and how you're going to see it when it comes back. So the actual numbers are on that spreadsheet on page 182 and 183. This is for the construction management of the downtown streets for the summer. But that includes much more than just the Main Street phase 1 and 2. That also includes water projects on 6th and 7th Street and sewer projects on 9th and 10th Street. Those are currently planned to all be bid together to try and get the water project track a larger contractor. So that is, this would be the construction management for all of those projects. You can look at one project or 6, however you want to look at it. But there are 6 phases inside this project that need to be managed. Fiscal impact is outlined for you there. So this is not a polished project, or this is not a polished product. We are not done with negotiations with TD&H on it. So looking at the action item A and action item C, you can kind of get a feel for, do you want the negotiations to be done and us to provide you with full product, which you can then review and vote on in the next meeting? Or do you want earlier in the process, knowing that when you get the final product in the next meeting, there's going to be changes that will look slightly different than what is presented today? So those are kind of 2 options on how we format this.
Commission discussion? Commissioner Sammer?
Not quite ready to answer your question, Mike, but one thing I would like to see is comps. What are comparable construction management percentages for these type of projects for municipalities? And again, just throw out there again the bid process of just handing us the TDNH. Not sure that's the best option. Not saying it is or isn't, we just don't know. Is it normal that your construction manager is your A&E person? Is that a normal process in municipality construction?
It can be. I'm not sure there's a gold standard, but there's a wide variety of that.
Well,
I'm just
DEQ
wondering how-
requires the design engineer to sign off on utility extensions.
I'm just wondering, who's holding the engineering is accountable if the construction manager is the same person?
Public Works Director.
How does that, what's that process?
It's just a standard contract review process, like any contract. Jan's going to go out and inspect to see if what TDNH is saying is actually the case on the ground. So it's our oversight Shannon's responsibility as Public Works Director to give direct oversight to the city engineer, any contractor that's out there. And then my job to give proper oversight to Shannon to make sure he's going out there and doing what his oversight to do. So that's basically, and that's pretty standard across public works departments. The Public Works Director has that oversight on the city engineer or whatever engineer's hired.
Any other questions on this particular issue? I just want to just clarify for myself then, this is a bid just for construction management, correct?
Correct.
It's for, and they're bids for these particular projects that you just outlined. And so, so if we did all these, the rough estimate here is $2.6 million for the management portion.
No, that's the construction cost. You'll see that under the top left corner there, it says construction estimate. In the same table that you're.
Yeah, I did make that mistake when I was in the office.
So the construction estimate is provided, so you can see percentage of total construction costs.
Okay. So in this case, the presentation would be all finalized and we would see it more in a format as in page 104. Would that be correct?
That is correct. So that's just an example of the format that would come before you. I don't want you to think you're some spreadsheet.
So basically, the idea is you're trying to get a sense that the commission's really is interested enough to see the steps or a step before we get to final cost approval. And do we want to see this type of interim cost estimates before we go into final so that we can query those estimates and really dig deeper into the numbers before a final estimate is presented to us. That's kind of the idea here. So I'd be interested to hear what the commission thinks about this as well. Do you want to get into this aspect of the process, or would you prefer not to? And I guess we'll look at this next week, or is this mainly to answer that question?
No, this is scheduled for December 19th as well.
The final.
The final.
The final. Okay, so this particular project will come in the 19th in a final presentation. So, but your question in presenting it this way is, does the commission really want to get involved at this point in the stage of estimating for a project? That's the real question here.
Is action item A more to your liking, or action item C? 1 or 2?
Which one's clear? Left
What
on
does one look like?
page 104.
So this basically, if you go back to the Northside Transportation Study, that was a completed bid. Everything was done, it was wrapped up with a nice little presentation. That's one way to do it. Or this is kind of more in the nuts and bolts. It's messy, we're not done with it yet. You just get a spreadsheet and an example of what it's going to look like.
Why can't you just add the detail with the option A? Why can't you provide us option A with the supporting documentation on the spreadsheet?
Because the spreadsheet will get incorporated into the official, it's already in option A. It's just in a more formalized manner. and it's done. Like, we're not going back and renegotiating. It's already, we renegotiated that proposal. And so this is earlier in the process. We're still back and forth on this one. So these may not be the final numbers you would see on the 19th.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, thank you.
okay, while you're thinking. So in this format here, I mean, without any reference point, I don't know what I would personally learn. If I, you mentioned that you're still going back and forth. At this point, what is the administration and public works doing with these numbers? What are you looking at and what are you trying to decide with these at that point?
So we're going back through and seeing if we think this is so there's a couple stages. There will be the, hey, that seems like a lot for the 7th Street project, why it's that high, and then we get an explanation, and we change it or we don't. And we're in that process of, is assigning it to the city engineer the most economical choice? So if not, then we got a totally different process that we'll have to do. So we're doing that analysis back and forth with them and saying, hey, this should be closer to this. Just basic back and forth on the negotiations. What is to be done is pretty set. We know what the projects are. So now we're just in the process of, hey, what's it going to cost us to do the next year? Okay.
Any thoughts? I know that without that kind of background and knowing what you're talking or discussing or considering each one of these, at least for me, unless I'll think about this over the next couple of weeks, but at least for me, this looking at it this stage is probably not going to be that beneficial for me, because if you're looking at particular costs and you're already negotiating costs and wondering if this is too high or if it's too low, did they really forget something in the bidding process? I personally don't want to be involved in that. That's just me. Just being honest. Well, I'll think about it for a couple of weeks. And if I get some inspiration, otherwise I'll come in and change my mind.
Well, the nice part is this is just a setup. You don't have to make a decision tonight.
Yep.
No decisions tonight on these 3 items. But you'll get to see what this looks like in its final form. Is this helpful? Is this not?
That would be more helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's what's going to
That's
happen.
the
But just start thinking about that process. So when we get to the 19th, both of these will be resolutions for the city manager to sign. So then you can see, okay, we talked about this one. I feel like I got all the information I needed. I don't need to see it in the earlier process. The only thing it's going to do is drive a 2-week delay for when we have a contract ready to when I can get it in front of the commission to sign. An additional 2 weeks to whatever you need. Right. So there's a time cost associated with finishing it before I bring it for you the first time. In most cases, that's probably not a huge problem, depending on the term of the problem. In this case, we probably would have had to put more effort to get this one in front of you because we do want to start the bid process for that street project. So before we do that, we need the construction management contract in place. So this is one that was going to end up on the 19th regardless. So this just took the opportunity to show you a couple of different ways we do business.
Right? Commissioner Hoagland?
I think I agree with James that it's information that I don't know it's going to help at this stage. The only thing I can actually question here is there's this little tiny note that it says research dizer 12-inch main in the drawing here, written by hand. And I guess I could take from that today is if we had a 12-inch main, which doesn't look like it according to the construction block down here in the information, what would the cost difference be and what's the advantage? That's the only thing that I'm feeling I wondered about as far as how I can take the information into the next vote.
So to make it even more confusing, none of the changes were built. Those are all things from the whole package. So it's just a format that you'll see.
Same with the map?
So everything
Right.
except the spreadsheet.
Okay.
The spreadsheet is actually the only new information. The rest of it's just an example of what this should look like when it comes to.
But is this question relative in this, or is this just
I have no idea.
busy work?
That was just something we pulled down as an example.
Okay, all right.
None of that
Those
is.
Those are my notes and what information we had available to provide them for doing the design.
Okay. So I agree with James that I think in some cases, having advanced information that helps us make a decision matters a lot. In this case, I'm not seeing a lot of advantage to it in this kind of situation. That's all for me.
Anyone else? Commissioner Sandberg?
I guess providing me a spreadsheet, yeah, it's probably not that helpful, but I would prefer to see the final document. But with your summary of, we negotiated bullet points, we negotiated this, whatever you did to come to the final solution. You looked at TD&H was our best option to serve in this capacity, this is the reason why. And if you can summarize all that in bullet points when you hand it out to us, I guess that's where I want to know the rationale. But you're hired to make those decisions with the rationale and to facilitate those discussions. But we want to know, as part of our due diligence, what activities actually occurred.
So do you need numbers with those activities?
Well, I mean, whatever, like if you could say, they estimated 15% construction management, we knocked them down to 2.5 or to 12.5 or something like that. I mean, yeah, in that capacity, I think it's helpful for us to know that you made those accommodations for the city. Yeah, I guess it's, but I also, regardless of when I get the information, even once I get the final proposal, I would still under the type where I would want to have the discussion of the final proposal and then still vote on it at the next meeting.
Which is what I made. You got the final proposal.
Yeah.
And then we'll see it on the next.
I would rather see but with a summary of the process. The bullet points.
I'm not sure how to do that without the numbers. That's going to be a long.
Well, you can throw the numbers in there. I don't care.
Well, but that's.
I would, if I may, I know what you're saying. If you were at this stage, 1 week and then the next week we see the finals, if you included this and we could compare, that might answer a lot of questions. Is that what you're thinking as well? No.
No. I guess
I'm not clear either what you're asking.
I don't know if you can combine the two things, just because of I can provide you the spreadsheet that's, it took me no work. I just to come up with a thoughtful product that goes through the entire process of what I did to get your answer is going to take a lot of work. That's going to be a significant hour requirement for each resolution. And I'm not sure it actually gives you anything additional that's useful, because the final answer is still the final answer. So it's either worth it or it's not. Doesn't matter how I got there.
I think it does though. I mean, our role is, overseeing the city manager. And so if we're not privy to, what's happening, we don't know. So for instance, I don't know why it would be difficult to say, negotiated with, chose TD&H, and here's the reason why. Negotiated 2.5% off their original fee, and this is the reason why. I don't know why that would be so difficult, because we're going to be asking those questions at the beginning anyway. Or I am. So, I have been. So, I don't know why it would be hard for you to summarize that and just dump it in the board packet.
Well, because it depends on what your definition of summarize is, because everybody has a different definition of what summarize is. So trying to figure out all 5 of them is difficult. But actually, it's something I'm going to talk about in significant comments. So, really, the question becomes, and this is a fundamental question that the commission is going to have to answer, is how much of what I do you have to have the information or actually have proper oversight? That's really what it comes down to. Is do you need to know every negotiation I've made? Do you need to know the numbers behind every decision I make? Or is the outcome enough? Or where in the middle does that lie? And I think that's really the fundamental issue of this, is what level of information are you comfortable with my decisions? And that's something that the 5 of you have to figure out, is how much information is that? How much is it in the packet? How much is it ahead of time? How much is it in the final? And I think we probably could formalize that, and that would be exceptionally helpful. Is what is expected specifically for each kind of thing. And I don't think it has to be the same for everything. There's going to be some resolutions like the MRL license. I don't think you need to see that a meeting ahead of time, because it's not really it's a simple thing that you can just see, understand implicitly, and we can go forward. Obviously, contracts are going to be more difficult, and those might be something you want to see ahead of time, unless it's a contract for a singer at Summerfest, which I'm going to assume you don't want to see twice. So I think we just need to draw the lines of what you want from me when, so that I know when to focus that energy and when to spend that time, and when that time can go to other projects.
My thoughts on that are, I think some people here think, oh, it's micromanaging. We're not asking you to tell us what you talked about at your staff meetings. We're not asking you how you evaluate your staff members. We're not asking you on a day-to-day. What I'm asking is the decisions that the commission has to make. And I think I stated this at the last meeting. I have to have the data and the information that makes me comfortable that my role is the due diligence. We're here representing the people. So if you just come in, and I'm oversimplifying it, but for the sake of discussion, you just come in every time with a construction contract, and we're supposed to say, we're assuming he negotiated, we're assuming he had conversations, we're assuming he looked at other bids. We're not doing our job. We have to know that happened, because that's what we're here for. We are elected as a checks and balance with the administration. So, we're not asking you about the day-to-day stuff. We're just asking for the backup on those things that we have to improve. And I'm not speaking for the rest of the commission, I'm speaking for myself, but that's where I'm coming from.
And that makes total sense. I think we just need to draw those lines very clearly, what the commission expects. Because otherwise, I'm going to be not providing the right information for certain individuals. And if there's not a collective definition of what the right information is, then there's 5 different expectations. So I think just a formalization of the process would probably solve a lot of the problems, because you know exactly what is expected.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good process to go through. It's a good thing to solve and kind of get on the table and really hammer out what is it that we need in order to make those more difficult decisions. Obviously, there's a number of decisions that aren't that difficult. at least in my mind. But there are more difficult decisions where we're into details of this nature where when you see it and try to absorb it, sometimes you don't have all the right questions all at the same time. But if we thought it through ahead of time, in certain circumstances, we might be able to, give a clear definition of what that might look like. I'm not sure if we're there yet. I'm not sure if we can clarify that right tonight, or at least I'm not sure if I can in total. But I think it's a good start, and I think it's fair for you as a city manager and fair to us to know and to have a good idea of, what is it that we're really looking for in these more detailed contracts, these broader scope decisions that are, costly to the city, costly to the taxpayers, and how do we assure ourselves that we feel comfortable with our own due diligence? And I'm not sure if I feel comfortable clearly defining that tonight. I almost believe that this is if I may, I think it's more of a workshop session.
Oh, it's gonna be multiple workshop sessions.
Yeah. And, this is just a start to kind of get the juices going and realize that, where do we start? And I think, at least for myself, Warren will be here, I won't be here for the final decision on that. But I think to clarify that, I'm left in a position where I don't really know how to define that tonight. I think it's gonna be a discussion and a workshop or multiple workshops where we get into the really nitty-gritty and clarify that for the commission, because this is gonna come up in the future. As new commissioners get here, they're gonna wanna know, what we felt was the appropriate amount of information to require of the city manager in order to believe we did the proper due diligence in our decision making. So
before we go on,
yes,
rewind to make sure we covered what you want for this contract with this air comps. And was there another one?
we're going to be looking at the entire contract for this construction season.
Construction manager.
Just construction management.
Just construction manager. So
Not
construction.
the entire construction cost.
We have the whole bid process.
That's bid.
Okay.
You were gonna also find out for me if it's not required to have construction manager.
We are required by construction. I know that's required by EQ on.
You can't just mention.
No, we can't. He can.
And to be honest with you, Matt's actually already done some of that underneath our city engineer because he is studying for his EIT. PE, excuse me.
But yeah, it's part of my DEQ, but I'll get you the exact reference for that. So that's two. Thompson requirement for construction manager.
If I think of something in the next couple of weeks, I'll give you a call.
We'll put it tonight. We can't do it.
Try my best. I'll call you. How late can I call you tonight?
8:30.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Hoagland.
So just a basic answer to going back to your question, what is it we want, or I want in this case. One of the weaknesses, and not just yours, but in general, I think, is not having updates along the way. Well, because then we get to a major decision and we didn't really know the process to get there. And now I think it can be pretty basic. So I wrote down just some of the things that I considered updates that I would like. So like with projects, contracts, for upcoming contracts, major decisions in general, but updates could include like cost changes, basic process, just basic process of how we got to this point. Some steps and significant issues that we have to think about or consider. To me, just having that ahead of time helps us think down the
What
line.
stage?
At what stage?
Because
Depends on the issue. You know, I mean, if it's the water reclamation project, I think I'd like to know sooner than later, because we're talking a major, or our major project. But if there's, you know, conflict coming, or that we've been dealing with as a city within a project or an issue, knowing ahead of time about that versus the 50 people that come in the room, you know what I mean? So it's like just having the information ahead of time when it's happening is better than having it all coming down.
So I think the only drawback to that is there are multiple issues that never reach this level. We're getting a lot more information than we currently do, because a lot of them are handled at Shannon's level or they're handled at my level, and they never get to the commission because we solve them. And if we include you earlier in the project, we get a lot more issues and problems that end up not being issues and problems.
But I don't mean those mini steps. I'm talking about major or basic information. It's not, I mean, I can find the information if I need to, but having just updates along the way help us, I think.
So like for the water reclamation facility project update, I sent out the other day, that kind of
Yes,
update you're looking for,
Yeah.
just stuff like that.
right. Or I wouldn't mind an update on a regular basis at commission, like once a month. Okay, this is where we're at, because it is such a big project. Or the downtown situation, because it is, or the north side crossing issue. Having an update along the way helps us to help make the decision, I think, versus it all coming down at one time.
Okay, so that'll be something I'll write down and we'll figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
What information that is and what kind of projects. Because I think if we really work at defining that, we can have a really easy set of parameters where, hey, if this is whatever kind of project, these are the updates we want for this stage, this stage, this stage. You can have, you can call them mile markers, you can call them milestones, whatever you want. You get certain updates at certain times, whatever that is. And we can figure out exactly what all of you think that should be.
All right. As far as scheduling those workshops, let you guys work that out a little bit at a later date.
We might need a moderator.
You'll have one.
James.
One of you guys. You
An
do have
independent voice,
you do have the police chief, if you really need it. All right. Oh, okay. So, we've kind of rearranged our, agenda a little bit. Public comment. Gonna go first. Anyone have any public comment? Yes, come on up. You've already stated your name and, you've already written in the book. State it for the recording.
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Callender Street. I commend the commission on asking for the process that the city manager goes through in order to come to the conclusions that he comes to, and the importance of the oversight of the city commission on these projects. I'm frequently the only public here. sadly. Because all the information that is here needs to go to the public. You are our voice, you're our representative. And we appreciate the fact that you represent us. That you don't just rubber stamp whatever the city manager has come to as a conclusion, and you actually expand the conversation. I would hope over time that we move towards expanding the conversation even to a greater degree rather than a lesser degree. I really appreciate the fact that that you would find out the process by which the city manager made changes. And because you do that, the public knows that. And it's very important for us to know that. If you follow social media, recently, for example, the decision was made on one-way streets. And a lot of the people in the community are asking that we take a foot off of either side of the street and allow in the future for possible two-way streets with diagonal parking, for example. We would like to see that. We would like to see that as an option for us in the future. And I would like for this conversation to take place here as well. I just appreciate the fact that this body governs our community. It isn't done by staff, it isn't done by anything but this group of people. I would like to see more of the decision-making that you go through in the public arena. I would like to see it better done. I would like to see it expanded so that we can see the process by which the city manager arrives at the conclusions he arrives at, especially on the budgets as they're coming out. So, and I would like this body to consider, so many of us have had this discussion in the downtown, just taking that much off of either sidewalk. I've measured the sidewalks by the way downtown, and they vary from 11 feet to 12.5 feet. That somebody really was quite inebriated when they made that line. But we could take a little bit off our sidewalk on either side, and we could in the future go back to a two-way street if we wish, and still keep our diagonal parking, that kind of thing. I'd like to see that. I would like to see this body consider requesting that of our engineers. It's not a big deal. We're just not putting trees in. We don't need that additional space.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment tonight? Any other public comment? Okay. Moving on to let's see what is next. City manager comments. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is it. Sorry, you guys, we go over too much. I can stop sometimes. I've currently suspended that policy. You'll notice tonight that we changed the order of public comments and city manager and city commission comments. That's another thing for you to look at as the commission, decide if you like it or not. If you do want to make that change, that will require a change to the code. Actually, believe it or not, our agenda is in the code. Which brings me to another topic, and something we've already talked about is kind of a formalization of policies. Just a quick poll, how many of you have the 2015 update to the commissioner handbook?
Andy, with us right now or at home?
I usually how many have? Just make sure we have. I think an easy way to improve that product and do some of this formalization is to split it into two things. I'd like to create a commission desktop reference, which has, I think, a lot of what you're looking for, but in a more generic format. So it would have, and some of it's already there. If you look at the handbook, it has the annexation process, it has a list of city staff, it has a bunch of that stuff in there. But I think we could easily add some of our processes, i.e., what's the sewer extension process? What's the water main extension process? What's the subdivision approval process? In a, what I'm gonna call a desktop reference. So if you get an agenda with an item that is one of those things, you can just flip to that page and say, okay, this is the process that has been gone through to get to this point. So that information is available for you for a reference, as a refresher, things we don't do that often, or things we do all the time, but you're like, I don't remember exactly how that went. So that would be a reference. But then there would actually be a policy manual, which would require a vote of the commission to set policy. It would be, let's use an example. Currently have our agenda setting process and ordinance, which is probably a little bit of an overkill. But if we wanted to, formalize how the agenda is presented to the commission, one of the things Commissioner Sandberg has brought up is that she'd like more input from the commission prior to it being published. We could set up something simple like the city manager and the policy manual. The city manager will provide the agenda to the chair and vice chair by noon on Wednesday, and the chair and vice chair will return any comments by noon on Thursday. And then we can leave the current process, which is city manager will provide the agenda to all commissioners by the end of the day on Thursday. So that's just an example of something you could formalize, and then there's no question about how much input everyone has, and all the expectations are out. And then I know if I can't give it to you by noon on Wednesday, I gotta make phone calls. I can't give it to you by noon on Wednesday because I slid off the motor wasn't fast or something. And we could do that as we come up to any of these questions of what information needs to be provided, or what is the commission's role versus the city manager's authority on this specific issue that's not outlined in code. We would then formalize that and have a policy where everyone knows, because that way you don't have to talk about it every time there's a new commission or a new city manager or anything changes. That is a policy, and it would have to be changed by the order of the entire commission, which gives a new commissioner plenty of flexibility. If they want to change something in the policy, they can bring that up and have it put on the agenda, and then you can discuss it and vote on it. So that is just a concept I'm looking at, but before I put a whole lot of effort into it, I want to see if that's something that is appealing to you, or if that's not something that you would prefer to have. So, a concept of a policy manual on a desktop reference.
I like it. I like it. Frequently asked questions or infrequently asked questions. How do you
Or frequently asked
answer that?
questions when an infrequent topic comes up.
Like, the mind is kind of like a sieve. You need to look at it once.
I do, and then we can, as we talk through these of what information you want in the agenda, that can be in the policy manual under building agendas.
Right.
And it's- So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for your time.
Good. All right, thank you. Start at the far edge of the world over there, Commissioner Sandberg.
I told Patricia I would bring this up in regards to her comment about the shading off the sidewalks on the 2 blocks that we haven't completed yet to accommodate for angled parking on each side. And I was a concerned citizen request, so I said I would bring it up to see if anyone else is interested in looking at that or discussing that option. And I don't know, Mike, if you have any thoughts.
I think the only problem with that's gonna be the first block of it's already done.
Could we do it for just the 2 remaining?
You could, but then, sure, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it's gonna be, then you're gonna have mismatched streets, like that's, sure. You know, from designs, as far as design standards go, they don't look well on different streets, as you know, but.
It's like the funnel.
Yeah. So the first block, if you go back to 2-way traffic, you're gonna have to go to parallel parking on it. So then you're gonna go from parallel parking to angled parking, unless you physically go in and destroy the sidewalks and report them with that extra space. I don't think we currently have the space in the first block of Main to do that, right, Jim?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'll double check to make 100% positive, but that would be the biggest detriment to that. And then obviously we have to redesign the project to include stormwater and all that stuff prior to paying.
And is it true, though, that really the 2 feet is all we would need?
I would have to double check. It's somewhere close to that. But I think with the safe zones on two-way traffic, it might be a little more than that. There's a 20-foot lane currently, which is greater than the 12-foot lanes we currently have, so there is some slop in there. But I would have to check with them to make sure that the buffer zones on the lanes wouldn't be another, I think it was 1.5 feet.
Foot and a half on each side, and that would only give us about a 5.5 foot buffer, and I think they prefer somewhere around 6 to 7 feet.
Yeah. A 1.5 would give you absolute minimum.
On each side,
A 1.5 on each side.
so that's 3 feet.
3 feet total. Because obviously the buffers go up two-way traffic versus one-way traffic. Just to be okay.
Well, we all know that. So I'm really gonna miss watching people travel park. It might though be an option, and again, the commission may want to discuss or not, but to piggyback with that would be on some of these other side streets, maybe an option to look at when mitigating part of the sidewalk to allow for more parking, angle parking on, say, B, I guess we've already done B Street, so I guess it would have to be second. But I guess it was just an option I wasn't aware of, and so just something to keep in mind. But that's back to my original question. Does anyone?
Why don't you make a motion, see if there's a second.
To put it on and make a motion to put the discussion of the sidewalks on the agenda for future discussion.
Second.
Right, there's a motion and a second. And I'm assuming this is gonna be several weeks in the future? Or not?
I think maybe a substitution motion, if you get fancy with parliamentary procedure, would be a motion to direct the city manager to research possibilities of doing parts on portions of the downtown street project.
Okay.
And that would be able to set a date and figure out.
But
There's
how
gonna
we
be costs associated.
We want to get this out.
I
Well,
want to get this up.
I would recommend not doing it on parts that we're doing this spring. So that leaves all of second, which we're really only doing that intersection. Although we probably have to make sure the intersection match. It will have, it's gonna cost because we're gonna have an engineer out there and the traffic to make sure that it matches. I guess so you could do it a couple ways. You could direct me to up to $1 amount, once you're willing to spend to do it, if it costs more than that, then I won't do it. Or you could direct me to do it if it won't delay the bid process. Really, we got 2 weeks before you're gonna vote on the construction management contract. If we look to re-engineer current parts of the project, I think it'll probably be later. Would you agree with that, Shannon?
Absolutely. And I guess one of my other concerns is I've actually heard more business owners request the sidewalks being wider than actually narrower personally.
Just want to shovel more snow.
There you go, put out the sandwich words.
Yeah.
But there is a motion in a second, so.
Yeah, but I don't want to delay the party delay the process so much. I don't. What are your thoughts, Joe?
I would like maybe you just brought us information on it. Is it really possible? I would rather have you spend a little time on it than to try to look at re-engineering.
It can be done. The question is just how much sidewalk we want to use. I mean, because what's the minimum requirement for sidewalk?
6 feet.
6 feet, 9 or 12.
Mhm.
So we can take up to 6 feet off of each sidewalk, off each side. So you can add another 12 feet, which is an entire lane of traffic. So it can be done. The question is just what are you willing to lose to do it?
So all seating, right?
Well, and a lot smaller pedestrian traffic. I mean, so you got to think the sidewalks in Maine would be the same size as the sidewalks in Maine. Whereas, not necessarily easy.
Well, and I need to research that because of the way the businesses and the storefronts and the openings there might be a requirement for a landing just for people to egress and ingress inside to and from each business and still maintain at least a 5-foot clear zone for pedestrians.
And that's information that we're talking about, that's maybe information they're not discussing on social media that people don't realize exists. So for us to have that in answering social media's question. Is it enough, Sarah, do you think? Do you have that?
I guess where I would rephrase my motion to be more of just those type of information, what, you know, what Shannon was saying, what are the requirements for our sidewalks? And I guess I would look at it as a perspective of probably a different area. If we were to look at integrating that, maybe it would be a different area than this from Main Street. Just again, you know, sooner or later, I guess you just have to make a decision. You can always come up with all these other scenarios that are out there, and they're probably, you know, probably some of them are good and some of them are bad, but unfortunately, I think we've made a decision to move forward. So I would look at it in perspective as projects we haven't started yet. And so, but just not any engineering money spent, just what are the options? And if we wanted to have a definitive answer, yes, of course, we'd have to hire an engineer, but no sidewalk study. So I think that just would be helpful. It's just the knowledge.
Sure.
Knowledge share.
Rephrase that. We need to rephrase what we're directing the city manager to do now.
I would make a motion to have the city manager investigate sidewalk requirements for the cities.
A second.
That'd be a substitution motion.
Yes, I know.
Substitute motion.
So, should we table the first motion?
No, a substitution motion by procedure will, if passed, eliminate the first motion altogether.
All right.
So she is moving to substitute the first motion with the new motion. If it passes, then the first motion goes away. If it doesn't pass, then the first motion remains.
Okay, so, roll call, please.
Because it's an actual motion.
We just do a first and a second for an agenda item.
We have in the past, but
Request.
This is actually a motion to direct me to do something, which is different. than- So I would vote that.
Okay.
all right.
Chairperson Bennett.
Okay.
Commissioner Hopman.
All right.
Everyone else
Just get someone other quick.
Second on that. Commissioner Schwartz
Oh,
and Commissioner Sanford.
Or
Motion passes.
That's the first substitution motion ever.
All right. Okay, so, Mr. Sandberg, was your comment period, are you yielding now?
thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Schwartz.
I just want to add to the sidewalk thing, first of all, and
Another
I was for the curb extensions to begin with, and I'd like to see the sidewalks wider than there. Just want to go on record saying that. And that's without talking to any business owners or anything like that, so it's kind of nice thing. I want a pedestrian friendly downtown. The only comment I have is I had the pleasure of spending all day and part of tomorrow with Lisa and Dale at the sequential intercept mapping. And that's about all I need to say. Now on, this is trying to coordinate mental health services, court services, law enforcement, everybody involved in the community. So I know where to go for this, I know where to go for that. Dale knows to go for the same darn thing roundabout. So it's a pretty interesting program. I'll give a more detailed summary.
at the next meeting, but I'm glad to be part of it. And I yield.
Mr. Freeman.
I'm good.
Mr. Hoagland.
Two things. Speaking of social media, this is an old school social media, but there was a little handout going around on Park Street to businesses. That then the business owners were asked by two individuals, the people did not sign their names, but it was, they said it was two guys, that's all I know. That the statement on the handout is that the city would contact the state because of the 20 parking spots for the one-way on Main Street. They're closing down all parking on Park in front of businesses. And it actually got quite heated by the business owners that had seen it by two people that didn't say their names. But I called Mike on it, and I was, have you heard about this? And some of the people have called you and talked to you. Just wanting to clarify that it's a false statement that someone's handing out, that there's no decision on Park. It is a state highway, and frustrating because it's like the Facebook of Livingston can also be on a piece of paper. So just wanted to state that. And then the second thing I would really want on our agenda at some point, and I've been talking about it for years. Now that we have the traffic study with some recommendations related to streets and signage in particular, I want us to move forward with how we're going to change some of the signage and or street issues. And I'm not talking Main Street because that's already its own, but anything from signage, we get requests all the time, put up a sign here, and we have found out that it's not necessarily safe in certain places, and some places they need to go away. And so I would like us to, as a commission, request of the city manager to come up with a plan as far as the signage and how we're using that traffic study and all traffic studies to help make our streets safer. Do I have a second?
Second, including the rest.
Man, was that a motion?
I'll just to put it on the agenda.
I make a motion that we require request of the city manager to look at or to create a plan that reflects the traffic study recommendations and et cetera. I'm not too much.
Leave out this, et cetera. Okay. Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Third.
Oh, is there a second? Do you understand the motion?
Well enough, I think.
Okay.
We'll start implementing the traffic study.
No, years.
Years. Only been-
We have a motion and a second, maybe have roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holden,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
and Commissioner Sandberg.
4.
Motion passes. Those two motions.
I put it at the top, but
Commissioner,
Procedure.
yes, Commissioner Sandberg.
Can we actually vote on items that are not listed on the agenda?
Technically, no. Although,
I don't know why we haven't done it. Well, because we're giving direction.
but you're not actually voting on items, like you're not doing your legislative function, you're doing your oversight function.
But I'm looking at the public chart to know, since these items aren't listed on the agenda, I don't know.
We're just asking that they be on the agenda.
Yeah, well, I'm just asking procedural.
Yeah.
I was always thought that we couldn't take action unless it was listed on the agenda.
So I don't think this is considered an action, but I will double check on that.
Okay.
Because there's no legislative outcome to it. You're not passing a resolution, you're not passing an action item, you're not changing the ordinance. You're only giving me direction.
Actually, we don't even have to vote on giving him direction, right? Because he works at our,
Well, you kind of do.
So, yeah. I'm just curious,
I mean, if you all said yes, then obviously I would do it. That's not my point. But it does formalize and give me priority, right? Like, now I have investigate sidewalk requirements and traffic study sign, which has been pushed night sky ordinance down the list of things. Right, so this is really a great way for you to give me, of the things you want me to do, what are the priorities for me to work on right now?
good idea.
Because a voted commission directive to me is gonna take much more precedence than any single one commissioner's request.
Fair enough.
I have to bring my list to the next meeting.
But you do keep getting pushed down the list.
Hey, seconds will cost you money.
Troy, no, do you need a priority on those?
I don't need it, but if you have one, then I would focus on that first.
You know my opinion. I think implementing what we paid for and the traffic studies. We know we're not gonna change the sidewalks this year, so. I think in my opinion, implementing the study that we paid for is more than
Is there any disagreement with that? Okay, there you have it. Okay. All right. I've gone past my time for you to make that comment. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 9:06.